Hello and welcome to the ICEP Canada Pre-Departure Orientation. My name is Kira Hawkinson. I'm the Student Services Officer at ICEP for the Americas and Southern Europe. Here's our agenda for today: culture and daily life, academic matters, health and safety, before you go, and keeping in touch with ICEP. All right, let's start off with life in Canada. So Canadian culture. English and French are the official languages of Canada. It's a mosaic culture where diversity is embraced and celebrated. It's not always easy to define what a typical Canadian is like. Originally inhabited by Aboriginal peoples, today often called First Nations, and later populated by both the French and the British, Canada has a long heritage as a unique combination of cultures. The country welcomes some of the highest number of immigration in the world, including many refugees. And around 40% of Canadians identify as being from an origin other than French or British. They're often stereotyped as being really nice and agreeable, which I suppose is not a bad stereotype to have. Definitely has a large spectrum of political and social views, but are still rather tolerant than many other countries. All right, so daily life in Canada. Locals speak both English and French, depending on the area that you're in. The winters are pretty cold in Canada, but actually can have pretty warm summers. So definitely a variety of climates in Canada. Weekdays are Monday through Friday, and weekends are Saturday and Sunday. And most businesses are open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., which is pretty typical, and closed on Sundays. And there's definitely a pretty active nightlife in the bigger cities in Canada. All right, interpersonal relationships. As I mentioned earlier, Canadians are known for being pretty polite and nice people. They value independence and privacy. They don't tend to rely on family and friends in the same way as many other cultures might. Small talk is often viewed as trivial or insincere. And Canada continues to seek reconciliation with and restore land and civil rights to First Nations people. So tip to you to use First Nations, Native, or Aboriginal people instead of Indians. Use Inuit instead of Eskimo, bands or nations instead of tribes. Just something to keep in mind. All right, so for housing, so depending on your host university, your student housing may be either residence hall, apartments, homestays. Housing info will be available in your ICEP program contract or your acceptance package. And additional information can also be found in your pre-departure information tab in your ICEP account. All right, meals. Students will receive meal plans at university cafeteria. Students can often receive student discounts at local cafes and restaurants. And something to keep in mind about Canadian cuisine is it's pretty rich and heavily spiced. You can see an example here, which is poutine, which is fries, cheese, and gravy. So pretty delicious, but very heavy dish. All right, restaurants. Tipping is pretty customary when dining in a restaurant. About 15 to 20% is the recommended. Multicultural population history, so definitely a wide variety of cuisine options when you're there. This is an example of a pretty famous company or restaurant that's in Canada. It's called Tim Hortons. They make donuts. Donuts are pretty popular in Canada. Some other popular dishes include poutine, which I just showed you before, maple syrup, salmon, Canadian Chinese, and lobster rolls. So definitely a wide variety of meals that you could choose from. All right, technology in Canada. The internet is widely available across the country, so easy access to Wi-Fi, especially on campuses. Also common in local cafes and restaurants. Same outlets across North America, standard voltage. Several local phone providers to choose from. Here's a few examples right here. And you can set up an international plan with your home provider or buy a local SIM card, which are popular phone options. But definitely check with your own phone provider first to see if they have any good deals for international plans. All right, finances in Canada. Canadian currency is based on dollars and cents. All major credit cards are accepted in Canada. Students are allowed to set up bank accounts with major banks. You can ask your host coordinator about information or suggestions if that's something that you'd be interested in. ATMs are pretty widely available throughout Canada. They're safe and easy to use to withdraw any money if you need to. Just something to keep in mind is beware of withdrawal fees. And another thing is it's always important to let your bank know that you're going to be traveling so that they are aware that you're going to be in another country, and so your card does not get declined if you're trying to withdraw money or use it. All right, sports and leisure. Canada is a beautiful country where people love to spend time outdoors. That's a big thing. So, for example, hiking, fishing, canoeing, horseback riding. Because Canada is pretty far north, it's a popular place for winter sports. So as you can see, hockey is definitely one of their most popular sports in Canada. So I definitely recommend if you have the chance to go to one, I would go because they're pretty exciting. All right, here's some major holidays that take place in Canada. I can list a few: Truth and Reconciliation Day, Canada Day, Victoria Day, Remembrance Day, Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. All right, it's important to bring up culture shock when you're studying abroad. Culture shock is definitely a real thing that can happen at any time during your study abroad. Feel free to review the culture shock handout for tips on how to manage and cope with it. It's very common for students when they study abroad in another country for the first few weeks to feel, a little alone, a little out of place because you are adjusting to either the language, the culture, and just kind of daily life on campus or in the country. So give yourself a break. It can definitely be a little difficult for those first few weeks when you're in a new country. All right, feel free to pause the video at this point. You can look at some reflections from past ISEP students. All right, we're going to move on to academics. So the higher education system in Canada, it's a bilingual country, has developed two traditions for higher education, one based off the French system and another based off of the English system. Provinces are generally responsible for education except for federally sponsored Indigenous students. Distinctive educational system in each province. The Canadian system is often a mix of the US and British systems. Bachelor of Arts usually takes 3 to 4 years. Honors BAs are more specialized and often require additional year of study. All right, so campus culture. Universities typically have a strong sense of school spirit, lots of organizations, opportunities for you to make friends so you can join sports teams and clubs, classes, residence halls, different groups and things like that on campus. So definitely talk to your host coordinators when you get on site to see if there's something that you can participate in that you're interested in, and you can connect with either other international students or local Canadian students. All right, exams and papers. Progressive evaluation, multiple small assignments throughout the term, as well as 1 to 2 large assignments. So make sure to track your progress throughout the semester. Typically you have access to your grades throughout the semester, and you can see kind of how you're doing. Make sure you're always completing the assignments so that you're achieving a high grade. It may be different from what you're used to, where it's mostly tests or one big test. So just beware of when you're starting the class that you're following the syllabi and that you are doing all of your homework assignments on time, because that may factor into your grade more than you think. Okay, here's a little bit more about the grading system. They go on a A, B, C, D, F grading system. You can kind of see the percentages there. Canadian grades may also include A+. or B pluses, C pluses, C minuses, that kind of stuff, depending on whether your grade is at a higher or lower end of the letter range. A level of participation in class shows evidence you have done the outside reading or assignments and may therefore also affect your grade. More in the credit system, students typically take 5 courses per term, sometimes 4 if it's allowed. Always check with your home and host university to make sure that you are enrolled in enough credits. Most classes are going to be around 3 US credits or 24 to 30 ECTS per class. Keep in mind, semester students can only take single semester classes, so you can't take a full year class. You have to be a full year academic year student to be able to take one of their year-long classes. All right, registration. Registration methods will vary depending on the host university that you're at, so it's always a good idea to check with your host university, or you can check with me what the kind of registration process is going to be like. So also keep in mind that many of our universities in our ISEP system will have an add drop period. You can always check again with the host coordinators to see if they have an add drop period. So that initial course list that you do is not set in stone. You will likely be able to make changes later on if you would like to. All right. All right, in order for you to receive grades and credits for the courses you complete, you must follow the explicit instructions of your ISEP course coordinator. Instructions for receiving your transcript will be indicated in the ISEP program contract or acceptance package. So always be sure to read through your acceptance package, your pre-departure information. If you have any specific questions about academics or anything about housing or stuff like that, be sure to check with me or the host coordinator. Right, so interaction with professors in Canada may be more informal than other countries. Professors might ask you to call them by their first name. Definitely feel free to reach out to professors and classmates if you need any help. And if your professor offers office hours, I would definitely take them up on it. I know when I was in college, using office hours was super helpful for, if there was something I didn't understand in the class and just being more prepared, especially for tests. And feel free to write to your ISEP coordinator, academic advisor for general questions if you're having trouble, getting in contact with your professor. Here's kind of how the academic calendar generally runs in Canada. Take a look at that. All right, health and safety, critical health and safety resources. So ISEP has plenty of health and safety resources that you can use. Here's a few. Definitely look at your ISEP account under the Your Health and Safety Information tab. All this information will be there. You can look at your specific country handbook, so in this case, Canada, for more health and safety pre-departure information. You will be enrolled in ISEP's health insurance. You can find more information about that, again, in your ISEP account under ISEP insurance. You can enroll in the ISEP insurance and you can print off the health insurance cards and other enrollment information. We also have an ISEP emergency phone line. There's the number there as well. And you can always be in contact with your host university for their specific health and safety information as well. Just a little bit more for health and safety specific to Canada. Here's the local emergency phone number, 911. The legal drinking age is 19 in most provinces and territories in Canada, with the exception of Quebec, Manitoba, and Alberta, which is 18. All right, personal safety. So overall, use common sense, stay safe, pay attention to your surroundings, always be aware. You may think that it is a safe area, but it's always good to be cautious, especially when you're out at night or if you're alone or in a big city or something like that. Be sure that you're following all of the federal and local laws. It's always a good idea to travel in pairs or small group. Again, if you're at night or you're going out or there's going to be drinking involved, it's always a good idea to have someone with you and you know where everyone is going to be and it's good to look out for each other. Again, avoid bad neighborhoods. It's always a good idea to avoid that. You can always talk to your host coordinator or local students if there's areas that you should probably avoid going to. Do not take part in protests. Generally, it's not a good idea to take part in local protests because you never know. I mean, it might be peaceful, but it could change very quickly. So when you're studying abroad, it's always a good idea to avoid demonstrations and protests and that sort of thing. And especially if you sense a dangerous situation, feel free, to remove yourself, or if you have someone else there with you in the program, if you think it's a dangerous situation, you can help them as well with kind of removing yourself from that situation. And big rule too, we know that you're in college and some of you may drink, but please, be cautious, drink in moderation, and just know where you're going to end up at night and be safe. All right, now before you go, packing. As I mentioned earlier, Canada has kind of a wide variety of different weather while you're there, so it's always good to check kind of what's the averages around the year or when you're going to be traveling and dress or pack accordingly. So a variety of different things like coats and hats and sweaters and different things like that. Toiletries, if there's a specific item or toiletry item that you can only get in your country and that you really like using, I would suggest bringing that with you because you might not be able to get it while in Canada. For medications, it's definitely a good idea to bring as much medication with you to last your entire program. It's also a good idea to bring with you the prescription for the medication so that, if you lost your medication or you couldn't bring enough with you, see if you can get some while you are in Canada. So always bring a prescription, and then also maybe the chemical kind of generic name of the medication and the chemical makeup, so that because it may be different in Canada, so it's a good idea for them to know sort of the general chemical makeup. One other suggestion with the medications is bringing it with you on your carry-on luggage and not your checked luggage. In the occurrence that your checked luggage got lost, you wouldn't want to lose your medication as well, especially if it's really important. So I would suggest putting that in your carry-on. We mentioned this earlier, but just make sure that you're bringing the right electrical plugs or converters, depending on where you're coming from for any electric items that you're using, laptops and phone chargers and things like that. I would suggest not bringing things like hair dryers because I have known people who have typically hair dryers, depending on where you go in the world, don't match with the voltage very well and end up having a little bit of an explosion situation. So I would suggest not bringing hair blow dryers. It's always a good idea to bring copies of important documents. Taking copies of your passport is always a good idea to bring with you when you go abroad, or visa information or acceptance letters and different things like that. It's always good to have copies of those things with you. And again, check your pre-departure information in your ISA portal for any other items that you may need to bring. You can check if you need to bring sheets and towels, depending on your location or the housing option that you selected. You may not have things like sheets and towels and linens available when you get there. You may have to purchase it beforehand or bring it along with you or purchase it there. So just check those things in your pre-departure information in your ISIP account. All right, to do before you go, if you're in a direct program, make sure you've paid all your program fees at least 30 days before the start of your program. I mentioned this earlier, but check data plan with a phone provider for international plans, or see if you want to rent a cell phone or SIM card while you are in Canada. Make sure you know the date and location of host orientation and your program start and end date. That should be available in your acceptance package and also the pre-departure information. So please be sure to check that so you know which day you're supposed to be there and arrive and be there for orientation. Good idea to write down also the address of where you're going, and carry it with you in your carry-on. So if you're going to be going to an apartment or an Airbnb or a residence hall or something like that, it's always good to have that address with you so you know exactly where you're going when you get there. I already mentioned this, but make electronic copies of all your important documents and upload them to a Google Drive or other online storage system. So it's always good to have a backup of copies like passports, IDs, and things like that in case you lose them. All right, keeping in touch. All right, to determine before you leave how you plan to stay in touch with family and friends back home, whether that be WhatsApp or FaceTime or Facebook Messenger or something like that. We have a tips for staying in touch. You can go to that link. And remember to contact your family when you get there. They're going to be worried about you and they want to make sure that you got there all safe. So, I mean, it's a good idea to tell them beforehand that you're going to be traveling and tired, so you may not be able to contact them as soon as you get there, but be sure to contact them fairly soon after you get to Canada. Okay, you can connect with other ISEP students and share your story. You can connect with us, on Facebook, on Twitter, and you can even become a digital ambassador. So that means you can post about your experience with ISEP abroad in Canada. Feel free to reach out to us about becoming a digital ambassador. You can maybe do a Instagram takeover where you do a lot of posts of kind of just your daily life in Canada. All right, that's the end of the pre-departure orientation for Canada. As I said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or to your host coordinators. Thanks.